Okay, so we're back with another game that concluded recently, and this time against an opponent around the 1100 mark. As always with these, no names on this one, just I'm playing as black, so Hamble Chess Boss is black. And we'll see how this one went through. It was a game where our opponent made some interesting choices, maybe slightly too risky choices early on. Got a big centre in compensation for it, and I was a little bit worried that they might have a chance to break through, but in the end it turned out that they didn't. So let's have a look. So again, we're playing black. So d4, obviously absolutely fine. Knight f6 was my reply. And f4 is a book move, although it's unusual. Yeah, the canard variation, okay, fair enough. The idea, I think, is just to set up a stone wall with pawns here and kind of accept that this bishop won't be great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the stone wall system. It's pretty safe, pretty solid. But let's see how it went. So e6 is okay, nothing wrong with that at all. d5 is obviously perfectly good as well. e3 was played. Again, fine. See, we're setting up that sort of what's called the stone wall formation on those black squares. b6, so if my opponent is going to weaken all the white squares, I may as well have a bishop here pointing straight across those white squares. Why not? Queen f3 is quite an annoying move because it's obviously threatening the rook. And I can't play bishop to b7 because that square is not defended. So I think I played knight c6. Oh, no, I didn't play knight c6. I played d5. So having just described the plan to do that, I immediately blocked it. And yet that is the best move. It claims space in the center. This square now, my knight can go there at some point if I wish. And the most natural square for this knight for white has been taken. So, okay, fine, d5. c4 is excellent. The computer prefers c3, so if you're going to play the stone wall, you may as well complete the job. But nothing wrong with c4, and it's a perfectly natural move. I've just developed bishop e7. The computer wanted to play c5, but I always find you get this position quite a lot in Queen's Pawn games where there's suddenly 4 pawns here and who's going to take who first, and it's all terribly confusing, and I'm not a big fan. So I didn't do that. b3 it doesn't like, just wants to play knight to c3, just develop pieces. In fact, yeah, that's quite a significant difference. So I wonder if I did pick the correct next move. Yeah, castles is absolutely fine. It still wants me to play c5. I'd be more likely to play c5 once my king's safe, I must admit. But g4, so this opponent has decided to start throwing pawns. I imagine this is coming straight at my king. But has done so without developing any pieces, except the queen, which is kind of backwards. You really should, get your minor pieces out first, get your king safe. But I mean, yeah, okay, I can sort of understand it. The other problem with this, of course, is this diagonal is now a bit exposed. So let's see. Knight e4, which we mentioned a few minutes ago, is coming, and that now releases the bishop. Oh, no, not there. Releases the bishop to go there, check, and so on. So it's pretty dangerous. a3 it's called a mistake, and it's just not doing enough. Again, nothing's developed, and the king is sat in the middle of the board. So what's white played? Has white played anything other than pawn moves and one queen move? So really must develop a bit quicker. Bishop h4 is the best move. Okay, that's good to know. The king has to escape. And it didn't like knight f2. Now, it's hardly a disaster because it still says we're 4 pawns up. But he wanted to play the bishop b7 move first. That's really computery these days. I just go and grab the material. It can't be a bad thing to just go and win a rook. King to c2. So you've got to get out of check. So yeah, fine. And I took the rook, and again, it's fine. We're basically 4 pawns ahead, but yet again, the computer wants me to play c5. And this time I can understand why, because if the pawn was, firstly, the rook can't escape, so I can play knight takes rook whenever. And secondly, if all 4 of these pawns disappear in exchanges, now that this is bang in the middle of the board, I imagine that that's probably going to work out pretty well for black. So the black king's nice and safe and tucked away. The white king's stuck in the middle. So yeah, this time I can understand why. So I can really understand c5 being a good move. And our opponent takes the knight back. Well, why not? And then didn't like bishop e7. Now I did it because I didn't want that pawn to go forward. And then how do I get the bishop back out again? Guess what move it wanted us to play yet again? Yet again, it wanted c5, which is obviously okay for the same reasons as last time. If all these pawns disappear, look where the king is. And there's still, by the way, no white minor pieces developed. Even this rook is still there. And we're on the, what, 12th move, I think? Okay, f5. Totally understandable. Is trying to get at my king, but I just keep saying the same thing. The attack can't really succeed without these pieces being developed. Takes is good. Again, it's c5, 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 c5. Every time c5. Bishop g2 is the best move. Yeah, well, it would be, because now look at this. Pointing down towards my rook. Not nice. Not nice. I think, did I play bishop b7 is the best move? Okay, that's, oh, it's an excellent move. Look at, there's no difference anyway. They're the same. Computer said f4 was okay as well as a possibility. But yeah, nothing wrong with bishop b7. Knight to h3, so presumably my opponent wants to come to that square, or possibly to, oh, not there. I'm dreadful with these arrows. To one of these two squares, so the knight's attacking my king, presumably. But what it preferred, the computer, was to develop the knight the other side first. Okay, knight h3, fg4, fine. Knight's got to go somewhere, f4. c6 is best. Yeah, you've got to do something to protect this whole diagonal, really, against what's going on here. So that's why I did that one. h4 is okay. It's still, again, the computer is still saying, for goodness sake, develop these pieces. You know, you can't successfully attack the enemy king when half your army hasn't left the barracks. So h4, it isn't that it's bad, but it just, the computer wants the pieces developed first. dc4, because now I want to open up the board and try and get at the enemy king. Bishop's b takes c4. Yeah, certainly actual commentary on the video, I mean, you can see we're comfortably ahead, as it turns out. Now the computer's looking, but I was just slightly worried about whether this pawn might get down here, or maybe this bishop could come this way and point to my king. I knew we were winning, but I was a little bit worried about all this in the middle of the board. But it looks like there was nothing to worry about. Knight d7. Yeah, I was happy enough to give that pawn up. Yeah, there's two pieces pointing at it, but it was no problem. We'd have got rid of that bishop if we'd exchanged on that square, and I was happy to give a pawn back to get rid of literally white's only, or one of white's only two developed pieces. That was cool. Queen d1 is excellent. Knight c3, again, same pattern. It's just lots and lots of queen moves. Nothing wrong with it, but the computer's saying develop, develop, develop. Knight f6, so I've protected my pawn that was being attacked by the queen, and now I've got a lot of defensive pieces over by my king. Still was a bit worried about this center, I must admit. Knight c3, it's the best move. There we go, it's been played at last. Queen to c7 is okay, absolutely excellent. The computer wanted me to go there instead, but I mean, there's no great deal of difference between those two moves. e4 is best. Yeah, here comes that center. Here it comes. Look at these pawns. And I really was a little bit, am I going to get stuck here? But it looks as though it was no problem. b5 is good. I could have played c5 as well. But what I'm trying to do now is I've got the queen here on the same line as the king. I'm just trying to get everything out of the way. Try to get at the enemy king. e5 is the best move to play in return. Very good. Now, this is interesting. I retreated the knight, and it's still comfortable. But it wanted me to play rook a d8. So it wanted me to leave the knight under threat from this pawn. So I think that might be worth having a little bit of a look at. So let's do just that. So rook a d8, it says, is the best move. So if I play rook a d8, what happens? Why is it So minus 5.51, but are we not just losing a knight? So let's look at the best move for black, which presumably is pawn takes knight. Let the computer do its thing. We'd obviously capture back with the bishop. So I'm just looking at the material now, and that doesn't look like we're winning anymore. So that's interesting. I wonder what, I mean, we are winning because look at the analysis, but I suppose it's because the rook's on the same line as the queen. So there's two pieces attacking d4. So that's going to fall. These guys are going to be out the way soon with the queen attacking. Yeah, okay, that's fine, but that would have taken some calculations. Let's just clear that up. Why am I, so that one and that one could pair off. Actually, no, let's do that differently. Let's say the two bishops on each side pair off. One of the rooks pairs off. The queens pair off. Let's pair off some pawns, and we'll just see what the material is. And let's say a rook and a pawn matches up to the two knights. There's another pawn matching up. So at that point, I'm physically in pieces, 2 pawns up, but with a really nice center. Whereas what actually I did was play, so I didn't play rook ad1. What I did was play knight e8, and that just means I'm more material up. I think the computer preferred the attacking line with lots of play and open lines. Okay. But that wasn't awful, because you see we're still 4.5 pawns to the good. So queen takes g4 is excellent. Bishop back to attack the queen is good. And the other point about that is I was quite keen on getting the bishop to that square. So dreadful arrows. So we could check the enemy king, get an attack on the king. Queen g3 is inaccurate. It wanted it to go to e2. I can't honestly work out what the difference is. Bishop f5, as I just indicated, with check. And bishop e4 is the best move, blocking with the bishop. Takes is best, takes is best, takes is best. So a series of good moves. The analysis is getting ever more in black's favor. But I was still worried at this point. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces. I mean, the bishop's going to come out here. The rook can potentially come across. There's a lot of pieces in this attack. So I was still a little bit about whether we were winning, but the computer says it was comfortable. I didn't feel comfortable. So the obvious threat here that has been put together by the opponent is that possibility of checkmate, except that it isn't, because the knight's here protecting that. And I think that might be what came at this move. Yeah, and this is where our opponent made a blunder. They just thought it was checkmate and overlooked the knight. It's easily done. There's no chess player on the planet that hasn't at some point just accidentally blundered their queen. And sure enough, it happens. So their knight takes, bishop takes, bishop to h6. The computer says knight hf6, but I mean, the analysis board now says it's all over. There was quite an interesting possibility somewhere along here that would have ended up with a checkmate in the corner. I'm just trying to think where it was. Queen, but yeah, had I not had the bishop here, there was something to do with the knight coming into f6, king going across, and then bishop here would have been mate. So I had to be careful not to do something silly with that bishop. But anyway, queen b3 check, and at this point the queen is just going to mop everything up. Knight takes knight. Yeah, this is where I was being careful, because I said, look, bishop here check. If I stop checking, then there would be the possibility of the knight here, like I just said, the king going across and the bishop taking mate in me. So that's why at this point I just took the knight, just to make sure we couldn't walk into anything silly. And yeah, the computer agrees it was the best move. And yeah, I mean, the game's now over. We'll just whiz through the last few moves up to our opponent's resignation, which was here. So that was that one. It was a little bit hairy in the middle for a little while. Now that I look at it with the computer analysis, it turns out that it wasn't that hairy at all, but it certainly felt a bit dangerous during the middle of the game. But yeah, that win's got us up to around the 1475 mark, I think is the grade now on this account. So going up. But as I said in the description for this one, the harder games are coming. And I think probably 1 or 2 losses will come up now, and as we start to play more difficult opponents. All right, see you all next time. Hope that was useful.